Celebrity rehab day 28, 29, who knows? So the last time I had talked to y'all, it was from my session last Thursday that I had, and I was left enraged. Well, let me tell you, I carried that rage with me all weekend until my next solo session. Today, Friday, I had went in and I was supposed to be doing group, but I was still mad. I was pissed. And so my occupational therapist took me into a room to, just talk to me about what I was feeling. And I lost it then. I got really mad, not necessarily at her, just at the whole situation. And I was just crying and kind of raising my voice. I wasn't really yelling, but my voice was raised. And, she validated me. But at the end of it, she was like, try not to think about this weekend, don't think about it. And in the moment, it was like, okay, whatever. But then I left and I was like, why the fuck wouldn't I think about this? This is my life. This is my life. Try not to think about the racism I faced. If that ain't the most crack of shit to say, needless to say, I spent the whole weekend enraged. There were moments where I was like, okay, but for the most part, I'd be in bed, I'd be in the shower, I'd be in the pool, and I'd be like, okay, Chi, let's just try to calm down. And all I could think about is how I wanted to go in and cuss everybody out the next time I had therapy. And so the day finally came today. I woke up, I had a bad dream. I had a night terror last night, and then I woke up and I had sleep paralysis. Like I kept waking up from my dream, but I wasn't actually awake from my dream. I was still in another dream, and I had sleep paralysis, and I was like, this is my rage affecting me now, because this has not happened since I've been here. I haven't had sleep paralysis in so long, and the shit was so scary. Oh my gosh, I woke up hyperventilating, and I went in today with the mission of cussing my therapist the fuck out, because he was telling me last week, I think the thing that really did it was how he was talking about with me filing a human rights complaint against like my job, and like the insurance company being like, oh, I really want you to go forward with this, but I don't want you to lead with anger. Like you shouldn't lead with anger. It shouldn't be what's guiding you. In the back of my mind, I'm like, so what the fuck would I lead with? Why wouldn't I lead? Why? Is there a way that I should feel outside of anger for what has happened to me? And then he was talking about, and if anything, you just have to go back for the summer and you can work there for a little while and then you can leave and move to Halifax. I said, I have to go back for the summer? What? And just trying to prepare me for this meeting. And so all of that was bubbling inside me. And so when I showed up today, usually we have like a little banter, a little hee hee ha ha. None. I was not playing with that man today. I was not playing with that fucking man today. I saw him and said hi. I went in and sat down, and I was already vibrating at this point because I was so ready to let him have it. And then I was going to say the cracker going to surprise me by apologizing. And I was not expecting it at all. He was like, first of all, I really just want to start this off by apologizing for a session last week, because I realize now, after talking to my other therapist, my female therapist, that about what had happened, that I didn't realize that there was another option other than having this meeting with your work and going back to work for that other workplace. She made me realize, like, what if you don't want to go back to that workplace? And that is a very real possibility. And I'm sorry for not, on behalf of me and the other staff that were in the meeting, for not even considering that and letting you know that not returning there is also an option. And I know that you've probably felt like, what is the point of all of this if you still have to go back to that workplace? And so he apologized, and it made me emotional just because I wasn't expecting him to apologize, but it also made me even angrier. And I'm not gonna lie, I let that man have it. I yelled today. I fucking got angry and I yelled. So much so I made this man cry. I made my therapist cry from yelling. It was righteous, very much so. I wasn't saying mean shit. I was just telling them, like, how the fuck is it that I am gonna have to sit in a room full of white people? I'm the only black one, and I have to advocate for myself and prove for myself. And these white people get to decide what happens with my life as if I haven't already been a victim of systematic fucking racism. Now I need to put my life in your hands. And furthermore, why would you tell me not to lead with anger? Has anybody ever told you as a white man not to lead with anger? And he's like, no, no one's ever told me that. I said, I know nobody's ever told you that because you don't, as a white man, don't ever have to think about not being angry or people will view me this way or I can't be. I haven't been allowed to be angry throughout this whole fucking process. I haven't been allowed to be angry at any point, even though my employer has very much shown their anger towards me throughout this process. The insurance company very much displayed anger and mishandled my case throughout this fucking process. And I've just had to be like, just take it to the chinchi, because if you get angry, now you're an angry black bitch. You don't get to be angry. And so all of that has probably finally bubbled and boiled up to the point where I just had to let him have it today, because what the fuck do you mean don't lead with anger? I am very angry and very righteously so. When do I get to express that? And how do you as a white man get to fucking sit there and tell me not to be angry? I was going to ask what you would do if it was your daughter that was in this situation, but she would never be in this situation because she's not black. And the fact that I would have to go back to the same job that fucking put me in this situation in the first place, why the fuck am I here? Why am I talking to any of you people? Why are we working through trauma if I'm just going to go back and get traumatized? And then I told him, if I were to go back to that job, I would kill myself. I would just kill myself because they've already taken everything from me. They took my whimsy. I feel like I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I like. This completely derailed my life. And I'm still expected to go back there? I was yelling. And then after I was done yelling, I got up. I said, I need to go outside and get some fresh air. And I stormed out of that bitch. Whew. And I'm not one. I usually don't get angry, but as my friend Mo so eloquently put it, that's how you get cancer as a woman, and you don't want to get cancer, so get angry instead. Get angry now. And while I was out there, the admin assistant, the other black girl, she came to like talk to me and comfort me, and she gave me a hug, and it was really nice. And she was like, were you the one that was screaming? I said, you heard that? Because the rooms are supposed to be soundproof, but I guess I was yelling so vigorously that you could hear it through the soundproof room. She was like, yeah, me and the doctor and other people, we all came to peek out to see like what was going on. All we heard was yelling. And honestly, I should have just lied and been like, nope, because everybody would have believed me. I have never once yelled in there. And I try not to get to that point, because when I get angry, when I have been angry in the past, and I've gotten to the point where I feel like I need to yell, the police has always been called. And that is a traumatizing situation for you to express anger as a black person and the police get called on you. It just made me feel like, okay, I'm never safe to express anger. Never mind the fact that in the past when I have expressed it with family members, we just don't talk anymore. And it's been years since we've talked. And so being angry like that, I'm not going to lie, there was a point where I was like, the cops are coming for me. But I was able to calm myself down enough that I went back to the session. He's still in there wiping his tears. And he was like, oh, you're back. I said, yes, I am back. And he said, can I ask why you came back? I definitely thought that you weren't going to come back. And it would be, I would completely understand if you didn't. And I said, well, you did apologize. So even though I don't trust you, I am willing to hear you out. And then we had a very, how do I put it? For lack of better words, healing conversation. I think I really just appreciate the way in which he apologized even after I had yelled at him, and just being accountable, was very accountable. Like he said, yeah, I deserved that. I had that coming, actually, because up until this point, we've been seeing eye to eye until it comes to this return to work stuff. And honestly, thinking about it, I'm really ashamed that I haven't even told you what your options are. We've all failed you here by not telling you what your options are. And so if you feel like it's something you want to do, we can write a restriction for you saying that you can no longer work for the city of Yellowknife because of psychological reasons, and you don't have to have a meeting with them. You don't have to do anything with them. You don't have to be in contact with them at all anymore, and the WSCC is going to have to accommodate you and try and find you a job, this, that, the third. I'm not sure what that means yet, but I'm getting emotional a little bit. I am free from working for the city. I'm free. That's what that means, is that I get to be free. So yelling works sometimes. It works. I got angry today and the cops weren't called on me. I actually got an apology and accountability and options, which is so mind-blowing to me. There was a point where he told me that and I was like, this doesn't seem real. And he was like, I'm not going to say I feel bad because I don't. But he was still crying and he was like, I understand if you feel like you don't trust me to the point where you don't want to work with me as a therapist. I'll be really disappointed, but I know that after what happened, like, that I deserve that. So if you want to break up with me as a therapist, I said, calm down, white boy. I'm not breaking up with you. He wiping his tears. So we were able to turn the conversation around, and I was just telling him how I didn't even think it was a possibility that I didn't have to go back and work for the city. And he was like, honestly, it breaks my heart to hear you say that, and lets me know that I did fail you up to this point as a therapist. And then I had asked him, like, I was like, can I ask you something? And he was like, shoot. And so I said, before our meeting last week, where I had to tell you everything that happened and all the ways that this case has been mishandled, did you not know any of this? And he was like, to be honest, I usually like to go into my cases, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's the whiteness in me, but I don't necessarily read the case file before I go in, because I want to be able to form an opinion naturally while talking to you and be able to see your emotions. But now looking back, I see that when it comes to you, that probably wasn't the best approach to take, because had I known all of this stuff earlier, we could have had this conversation earlier, and maybe we could have seen eye to eye and been on the right track and told you about your options. But I've completely failed you in that way, and I'm taking full accountability. And so it was just, we ended the conversation laughing, or the therapy session laughing, but there was a point where I was like, what are we about to do? Because I'm vibrating. I'm vibrating. And it just feels so freeing to be able to express anger as a Black woman. My God, it is a powerful and healing experience, and it needed to be done. Had I went in there and just cried or just like tried to disassociate, I wouldn't have gotten the results that I wanted. And now I actually feel a tiny bit optimistic about my future, because fuck the city of Yellowknife. Fuck them. I'm never gonna have to work for them again. Whoo, and I still don't believe it saying it. Like, I'm like, what? So I'm proud of myself for allowing myself to be angry and not get cancer. Yeah.